Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, je suis ravi de modérer ce panel d'une très grande qualité consacré à l'économie mondiale dans une période de turbulence dans laquelle les impératifs de souveraineté, de résilience et d'innovation sont plus importants que jamais. Ils ne l'ont été. Pour ce faire, j'ai le plaisir de vous présenter mes invités. I will switch to English, so you can have translation headsets. Vous avez des casques pour la traduction. Je vais parler en anglais puisque ce sera plus commode pour la plupart de mes invités. So, on my left, Mr. Conil, you have been a former Prime Minister of Haiti and held other very important roles in government. On your left, Mrs. Radishova, you have been also former Prime Minister of the Slovak Republic, and you held other very influential roles in government and in the academia, because I know you are a professor of sociology, I think, originally. On your left, Mr. Muscat, one of the most brilliant European politicians of his generation, I would say the new generation, and former Prime Minister of Malta. On his left, Mr. Șolo, who has been former Prime Minister of Romania and also held other very significant responsibilities. And last but not least, Mr. Svoboda, you have been Minister of Foreign Affairs and Deputy Prime Minister of the Czech Republic. And I know you have to leave us earlier, so we will start this conversation with you.
Thank you so much.
Let me just ask you the question. But I know as politicians you always have an answer to any question, but please. So basically, what we are going to do is start with the key question everybody is worrying about or asking about. I name it the Trump factor, or Trump 2.0. So what will be the impact of the new Trump administration? So far the signals are not very optimistic for the rest of the world, especially for the largest economies like Europe, China, but also for America's closest partners, Mexico, Canada, and for the emerging and developing economies all across the world. The key question is now about trade and the threat of tariffs and trade war. So I want to, Mr. Svoboda, to ask you this question. Is Trump serious about these tariffs? And if he is, what impact will it have on the global economy, and especially on the European economy? I know the Czech Republic is very active in the automotive sector, so I guess this will be one of the sectors that could be impacted. And I look to your insights on this topic.
So, again, I'm apologizing for interrupting you. I am so sorry. I'm under pressure of the time because I have to leave. So just to answer your question, yes. The Trump administration is a new challenge because when some years ago, in the 90s, the world was divided between the two superpowers, Soviet Union and the United States, economically, strategically, politically, militarily. Today, United States is still the most important military power, but economically, something has been changed because, in my view, the United States made a huge mistake not to incorporate Russia into the world economic system, and Russia was frustrated, and Russia has been all the time very resistant to this style of the economic governance of the United States. United States, in my view, was engaged in making a great deal with China, believing that China, when it is more wealthy and that China, due to the rapid development, could behave like the United States. But it is not the case. Chinese are still Chinese. And now we see a new scenario. The new scenario is that the superpowers are not representing any order. In the past, it was the order of the two powers. In the 90s, it was the order of the United States. Now we are politically in the time of disorder because no one knows what type of order we have to introduce today. Why? Because the new phenomenon, and this is the challenge also for the Trump administration, is that we are in the digital area. It is a digital private companies who are the most influential, and we will see how influential is the private sector, I mean the digital worldwide companies, and we will see to what extent Trump is capable, being the new president, govern. Because militarily, it is out of the question. Still, the United States is and will be the most important military superpower. But economically, I think that even for Trump will be new challenge to realize that the governments are not capable of controlling the new digital order, which is now in the private hands. And that's the new challenge also for the new administration, how to handle this new phenomenon. And this is also a challenge for us, for Europe, because we do represent also the order, and we will have to accept the phenomenon that economically the United States is losing its power and position as the only leading country in the world. Thank you.
So, in relation to my question, do you think Trump will apply tariffs or he will negotiate?
He will try. No one knows if maybe there will be tariffs against EU or against Russia. He has promised that he imposed the tariffs on both, and also for against Mexico due to the protection of the borders between Mexico and the United States. But it is the promise. But the question is, are you strong enough using the tariffs if the digital world is today outside of your control?
Thank you. I will pass the floor to Mrs. Radichova, and I would like also to have your opinion and your insights about this new dynamic that Trump could create, and obviously how it would impact the European economy.
Good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure for me. I was invited, and thank you very much for the invitation to this huge conference organized in Morocco. I'm not first time here, and I appreciate my stage here very much. So thank you. Concerning Mr. Trump and the President of the United States, first of all, three major assumptions. Maybe you will not agree, but I'm thinking in this way. First, 21st century is the century as already has mentioned my colleague, of information revolution and informative age. Second, there are new deep geopolitical inequalities around the world, among the states, among the continents, but also among the people living inside different countries. These new inequalities are dangerous not only because of political stability, but also for the trade and for our economic developments. Third, we are facing a new division of geopolitical power. China is one of the most influential country today with all their trade and impact on other continents. Second, I agree, the most powerful are the owners of technological firms, and only to mention 10 most wealthy firms in the world are technological firms. 8 of them are in United States, 1 in China, 1 in Europe. This illustrate the division also of non-political but also political power. Last but not least, we are living in the time of uncertainties. Today we are facing 164 different civic wars and army wars around the world. And in Europe, the crucial momentum is the war in Ukraine and the aggressive attack on Ukraine by Russia Federation, with impact on NATO and impact on the politics of Mr. Trump and United States. Also Gaza and other regions, but I repeat, 164 different open conflicts around the world. In this complex of uncertainties, we have to conclude that politicians have less power than the power is concentrated in the hands of technological giants and in the hands of new geopolitical game players. Mr. Trump is therefore facing new geopolitical divisions, plus new inequalities around the world, plus real inside economic situation in United States, and plus new attempt of Russian Federation to continue in the way not only of Cold War, but open war as we are facing in Ukraine. All these circumstances will have impact on the real politics of new President of United States. Depends. Major question, how he will decide to leave Mr. Putin to be the winner of the conflict or not.
Thank you, Mrs. Radishova. I think we will get back to this topic. But before, I would like to ask you about the industry in Slovakia, specifically the automotive industry, which is very much exposed, I think, to this new potential trade war, especially and the connection with Germany, which is really now having very bad times with an economic stagnation slash recession. So are there any strategies to mitigate these risks in your country? Because I know Slovakia has now become really an industrial powerhouse. It produces more cars than Italy, so it shows that it's a significant opportunity and risk as well.
Thank you very much. Concerning Slovakia, only to illustrate, we have 5.5 million inhabitants, but small country, but we are the biggest producer of the cars per capita in the Europe. So really very strong car industry with all, not only cars, but all the economic spheres and sectors connected with the car production. So yes, we are dependent, we are very open economy. It means that if there is an attempt to have taxation, we have real deep problems, not only as alone, but also together with other countries in Europe. The reaction, we have to divide because we are member state of European Union, so there is some kind of common approach how to react. If to negotiate, it's one way, or to do the same, taxation and customs against the United States. These two possibilities are on the table. As you know, the European Central Bank tried to advise to the states of European Union to negotiate and not to react in the same way and not to reopen the trade war. The trade war will have impact on whole world. It's the worst way how to solve today's problems, and not only for Slovakia, but for whole world. To reopen trade war meant decreasing of quality of life globally. There is no real winner.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Radichova. I would like to ask on my left Mr. Conil how these new developments could have an impact on Haiti and more broadly on developing and emerging economies, perhaps that don't have the political leverage that Europe or China could have vis-à-vis these new geopolitical realities. So how do you manage to support your country's resilience and economic sovereignty in these challenging times?
Well, thank you for that question, and thank you so much for including us. You're certainly right. New policies that will emerge from the election process in the United States will have different consequences for less mature economies than you would have, for example, in some of the big countries, more advanced countries in Europe. So I think there are three things here as we think about this. Is first for us is, there's going to be a cycle of change. This is predictable. And the critical question for us is how do we manage to make the most of the opportunity created by this change and manage the risk created by this change. And so I approach this in a very sort of systematic way. This is going to be an opportunity for us to rethink things like, how we create more resilient economies, how we diversify our partners, how we use innovation and technology to build up our sovereignty, how we look at multilateralism, how we build regional hubs and partnerships so we can deal with these shocks, how we organize ourselves so that we're less dependent on the fluctuations of one country or another. This is actually a time of challenge and opportunities. I will say this. I started my career as a public health person, and I remember one of the most critical issues we were facing early in these days were HIV/AIDS. At that time, we didn't have the solutions and the recipes we have today, and the costs were being estimated were extraordinary. And I remember as a public health person us sitting together and thinking through how we deal with this. Well, one of the most important programs that would come to the world was actually PEPFAR. It was developed under the Bush administration. So in a more progressive and positive way, it's more about how we organize as countries to face the new challenges that changes will inevitably bring. How do we learn from the past? How do we build on the experiences we have so we can better position ourselves to deal with it? So we really see change as an opportunity. A famous author once said, never waste a good crisis. So I'm really hopeful that this will bring leadership together to rethink how we organize, to provide us with more more space, and more security to deal with these challenges.
I know there is a very large Haitian diaspora in the United States. So what role this diaspora could play, you know, to reconcile the different points of view and try to bring more opportunities than risks from the upcoming administration?
Three types of issues. The first is, yes, there have been a significant number of Haitians that have traveled under a special Biden program. And there is the concern that with this new administration that thousands of Haitians will have to go back to Haiti right now that's facing incredible challenges from a security perspective. We have close to 1 million Haitians that live in the US and that are active politically, so that have the capacity to influence through their Congress, through their Senates, and we hope that they will continue to do so. We depend on the diaspora for close to 30% of our GDP through their remittances, in the order of almost $2 billion. So obviously anything that affects the US economy tends to affect our capacities and has direct influence on livelihood of millions of people. Remember, Haiti right now, almost half the population is food insecure, so we're really concerned about that. We're going to look and see what will happen in the next few days and weeks for those of you that have interest in Haitian politics with the special security mission that was highly supported by the Biden administration, and that provided us with close to 1,000+ soldiers critical to ensuring the security of the country. We don't know what's going to happen with the new administration in terms of policy and how they will continue to support the security issues of Haiti. So there are a lot of concerns, as I've said, and we're monitoring very carefully, and we would need to put in place clear advocacy strategies, diversification strategies, to see how we handle these risks. But they may also come with new opportunities, given the administration's tendency to be very sensitive to the migration issue, and so may want to look very carefully how they reduce the push factors. These are the things that we have to balance out in the next few weeks and months.
Do you think you will have a chance to reinforce your integration with your fellow Caribbean states? Is there some kind of common strategy or some agenda for pushing this integration further?
I think that's essential. And the conversation with the CARICOM members have been exceptional. CARICOM has been very much involved in the peace process in Haiti, in trying to restore a transitional government that makes sense. We hope they will continue to do so. They're thinking about better integration systems. And again, this is why I think that sometimes these challenges can create opportunities, because they tend to accelerate the implementation of other approaches just to be able to compensate losses that will come from the shocks that were anticipated. So yes, CARICOM, in my view, is going to be a key player in the next few weeks and months and years in terms of how we deal with changes in policy that may come from the United States.
Thank you. Mr. Muscat, you have been in charge of your country, leading your country at the time when Malta, I think, held the presidency of the European Union. From this experience, how do you view the current developments, and how do you think Europe should address this risk or these threats? Should it emphasize negotiation or be stronger and develop some kind of MEGA, Make Europe Great Again, or Europe First agenda?
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for the organizers for having me again here, and good morning to everyone. So I do subscribe a lot to what Martin Wolf had written in the Financial Times before the first Trump administration, or during the first Trump administration, when he was comparing it to the Obama administration, which I think more or less is the raison d'etre of what Joe Biden stood for. So basically, Martin Wolf wrote, Obama, we like what he says, not really what he does. Trump, we don't like what he says, we like more what he does. And I do believe that the first permutation of the Trump presidency wasn't that bad for Europe at the end of the day, because it led to a start of a realization that we cannot just play second fiddle, but need to really and truly have our own policies, which are not dependent on what our friends on the other side of the Atlantic pond do or say. And I believe it was, at the end of the day, quite good. The Biden presidency brought with it, again, that sort of, letting go of that agenda, which at the time one could describe as the Macron agenda, to create European champions, to have Europe do its own foreign policy, its own security policy. So if I go back to your first original question, whether we would need to expect tariffs, I think it's clear that we have to expect tariffs to be put on the table. But, and it is a very big but, it is a means to an end, not an end in itself. So that is why I believe that the tariffs will be disruptive, but will not create chaos, because we are not facing a US president whose main aim is to have the tariffs, but whose main aim is to create leverage in order to have the other side at the table given to a number of requests. I believe that the main issue is what those requests will be. And as some commentators in the States are saying, probably not even the Trump administration itself knows at this point in time what those requests will be. So it's more a wielding of power, saying, we can put these tariffs in place. We want to show that we are in command, and we want to get the others at the table. In the Trump administration, for example, when we had the tariffs put into place, and I remember quite clearly, I was Prime Minister at the time, we had Jean-Claude Juncker going to Washington to negotiate on these tariffs. I remember the debriefing that, and I'm not revealing anything secret because then it was made public. I remember the debriefing that Mr. Juncker gave us as prime ministers and presidents. At the end of the day, what was needed or what was asked for by the Americans was the removal of some sort of tariff on a particular cereal, which, okay, it could have created some problems for some part of the agricultural setup in Europe, but it wasn't some sort of earth-shattering request. So I do believe that the main issue over here is not what to expect as in tariffs, but what the end of the game will be. And that is where I think that Madame Merkel's autobiography that was released just this week comes in very handy, because she says quite rightly that the forma mentis of Mr. Trump is one of a property businessman, where he sits at the table, and in property, in real estate, there is one side that wins and the other side that loses. And he doesn't have the state of mind, and I'm not being a moralist here, so I'm just making a cold-blooded assessment, where he needs to win and someone else needs to lose. He doesn't see it as a sort of a win-win situation in her analysis, and I think she is making the right analysis. So the issue is to ask what he wants to win. And my final point is the key weakness from the European side here, I believe, has nothing to do with the United States. I believe it has to do more with the way we have ostracized China in the past decade. That we have followed the sort of idea that China is the big evil, cut most of the political ties as Europe, while as member states, most member states try to pursue the best possible relationship with China. Because at the end of the day, if one sees it from a purely economic point of view, having, from a supply chain perspective, having a source such as China, a transformational power and a market such as Europe, Africa, and the whole of Asia, I wouldn't say the United States becomes irrelevant, but I would say the sort of leverage would be quite different from the one it is right now.
Do you think in this regard, and I might be a little bit politically incorrect, but is Mrs. von der Leyen's position when she says that Europe has to buy more American goods to please the new Trump administration, is it the right strategy to gain leverage?
I think, look, let me start with Trump first. The main problem, and that is why I don't think that tariffs will be long-lived. The main problem with Trump's tariffs is not with Europe or with the rest of the world. It's with the American public. The tariffs will lead to inflationary pressures. And inflation was one of the biggest issues that led millions of people who hadn't voted for Trump in the first administration to vote for him this time around. Tariffs lead to inflation, to inflationary pressures. So that is the big issue. And the same goes for Europe. I don't know whether we should buy more American products. We should buy where it makes sense to buy. And whether that is Africa, whether that is Asia, whether that is the United States, at the end of the day, the European public is feeling the pinch of higher prices all the time. And definitely the European public will not want to subsidize from its own pockets anything that means that we need to pay higher prices in our supermarkets.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Mr. Sholo, I would like to ask you basically the same question. What would be the impact of the Trump threats and tariffs on Romania's economy and on the broader southeastern Europe? And also want you to comment perhaps about the specific challenges maybe you are facing in this sub-region, which are also related with the war in Ukraine and its economic and geopolitical consequences.
Thank you for the question. I think it's difficult to disconnect Romanian economy to the global European economy. Of course, we are most affected by the Ukrainian war, maybe than the western part of Europe. But Romanian economy is strongly connected to European economy, not only because of European funds, who are essential for our investments, productive investments, but also in infrastructure, and also because Romania has 20 million people, population, and more than 4, maybe even 5 million are living in other Western European member states. So Romanian economy is connected to a European one, and you know, the decisions on the trade, for example, all the decisions are, this is a European competence, so the decisions, the negotiations, and then the decisions are took at European level. And I think what is more relevant is the fact that after COVID, European Union is in another mood. And I know this because my last 5 years, I spent my last 5 years in European Parliament as member of European Parliament. Before that, I was European Commissioner for Agriculture, and I was involved also in trade negotiations, including with United States, with Canada, with China, with other parts of the world. And what I can see now is that after COVID and recovery program, big investment program, who in fact doubled European budget with this RRF, Recovery and Resilience Fund, European Union is in a different mood now. This started with first the Trump administration. With Biden administration, we reinforced our relation between European Union and United States, but I think the idea of this strategic autonomy of European Union, it's stronger now than in the past, and at European level, we have to be ready, and we are preparing in order to be more dependent on Trump decisions. Related to tariffs, you know, Trump is not a politician, he's a businessman, and he negotiates, he makes deals. And in my opinion, the discussions between European Union and United States will not be focused only on tariffs, on trade, because Trump will have other interests in relation with European Union. European Union have also other interests and other common points to negotiate with the next Trump administration. And when we look to the fact that, I don't know, unfortunately, I would say, we don't have a strong multilateralism. So international organizations to negotiate this kind of deals are very weak now. So we have more and more to make these bilateral deals. And these bilateral deals don't touch only trade. We have to combine trade with services, with access to resources. For European Union, it's very important, access to resources. The new European economy is based on decarbonation, but also on digitalization. European Union is the first part in the world having a regulation on AI, and AI it's now the big challenge for the world economy. And when I see, when I look on who is surrounded Trump, I think Trump will have an interest, a strong interest on how European Union will deal with AI on European market, with digital, how European Union will plan to supply with energy resources, taking into account what's happened with Russia and Ukrainian war. And I think Trump could be interested by a larger deal with European Union that only trade. So in my opinion, European Union need to have a deal as soon as possible with United States. I think Trump will need also to have a deal with European Union, because I don't expect his focus on his administration will be on EU relation, but mostly the rest of the world, maybe China, Asia, Pacific. So he would be interested to have as soon as possible a complex deal with European Union, with more things on the table than only tariffs and trade.
Thank you. I think it's, we'll still focus on this issue because it's a very important one for the global economy, and especially in relation with the Ukraine, Russia conflict. Let's say we are in a hypothetical world, which actually could happen very soon, in which this conflict is, brought to an end by the Trump administration. What's the day after? what are the key decisions that Europe must make in that regard? First, should Europe be associated in a way or another with the resolution of this conflict? I would say probably yes, but so far it has not been perhaps the direction that Europe has followed. And second, what would be the role that Europe could play in this post-Ukraine world? So I ask you, Mrs. Radichova, you come from a country which has this link between the East and the West, traditionally. And I know the current Prime Minister, Mr. Fico, has been in favor of discussing and talking to Putin, for example. You have energy connections with Ukraine and Russia. So what kind of role do you think Europe should play, and should Europe get prepared to that day, eventually?
Thank you very much. First of all, if you do not mind, one brief comment, what we have discussed already. We have to look on everyday life not only through the point of view of socio-economic dimension. I know it's important, but it's not the only part of our lives. If we threw out ethics from politics, we are lost. If we threw out values from politics, we are lost. If we are thinking in the way of human dignity, then we have to also do something to prepare the condition for everyday life and for the citizens to live as a human beings. So it's not only the price and consumer behavior. Second very important comment concerning economy, yes, in the 50s, after the Second World War, there was the transition from economic model from 19th century and the Industrial Revolution to the economy based on fossil energy, very extensive. Now we are facing another transition from fossil-based energy to the environmentally friendly energy. And it's not easy shift, not at all. And we know that without global cooperation, it will have no real effect in reality. And now concerning Ukraine, but this was crucial for me. So for me, any business with China is connected with human rights approach, and I cannot be silent. Ukraine, we are talking about Ukraine, and I feel not really comfortable, not at all. I see the death, I see the tragedy, I see the losing of human lives, I see the lost children and killed children. I see all these impacts on everyday life, and you know, it's our neighbor country, but if somebody is killing my neighbor, it's also my problem. And I have not to be silent and not to think to do something or not to do, it's risky or it's not risky, something, it's tragedy what's going on, and we cannot be silent and to do something. That's why Slovak government has done really as the first the help and support to Ukraine. The government was changed. I hope we will have a chance to explain what's going on with democracies in this region. And also the politics is now changed. So new prime minister in Slovakia is starting to play the game, good politics to all four sides of geopolitical distribution of power. So he's prepared to travel to Moscow. He's would like to negotiate with Putin.
He's taking the playbook from Viktor Orban, maybe?
Yes, absolutely. The same situation, but also as like in Serbia, do not forget the last elections in Georgia. They have stopped negotiation procedure with European Union. The situation is changed. In Europe, we are facing, not only in Europe, new kind of political system. And I call it populist cracy. It's not democracy, but populist crazy. And new left and right extremist populist parties are now keeping the power in their hands. In each third government in EU today, there is a left or right populist party and have in hands the governance. And this shift meant also the change concerning the relation to Moscow and to Kyiv. What will happen? We have to support those who now have to fight. We have to support those who are trying to keep their identity, sovereignty, and their own country. We have to do the steps to try to lead the war to the end of the peace, but not throughout the Ukrainian people like those who, oh sorry, but the peace is more important than your lives. I know what I am saying, because 1968, for my country, for former Czechoslovakia, was the crucial moment in our history because of occupation by Soviet armies and armies of Visegrad countries, not only Visegrad, but Warsaw Pact countries to my country, and we have to live 20 years under the occupation of foreign forces. And this is not real life. So this is not the way how to solve the problem, and I hope we are prepared to help those who are under the aggression of Russia and to support them in their justice and their fight, and support then the reconstruction of Ukraine at the end, hopefully at the end of the war.
And thank you. I turn to Mr. Muscat. Do you agree with what Mrs. Radichova said, or do you think that there should be more realpolitik in the European thinking, perhaps also related to the economic, opportunities that would be opened by the reconstruction of Ukraine? In other words, should the American companies get the contracts or the European ones?
So I do respect a lot the background and the upbringing of each and every person on the panel, and obviously what Mrs. Ratichova was saying on her experience in 1968 is part and parcel of her strain of thought, which I totally respect. My line of thought is one of a country that is not part of NATO, that is part of the European Union, that is geographically more south than Tunis, if you look at our map. So for me, I do see a number of problems in the European approach. And the name of that problem is, the main name of that problem is hypocrisy. I'll give two examples. So another point, another caveat. I totally disagree with what Vladimir Putin stands for. I was a target of Mr. Putin's government's misinformation campaigns over the years because I did not agree with a number of things that were requested from our country. because of our neutrality. So I have no sympathy lost for him, and I make a difference between Mr. Putin and the Russian people. So the first problem I find with Europe is that we are so keen in sending missiles to Ukraine, but then we don't want to buy their agricultural produce. And I'd rather buy the Ukrainian apples and not send the missiles at the end of the day, which I find mind-boggling. So the politicians all the time say they support Ukraine, but then we have all those problems in saying no because, you know, letting in the agricultural produce from Ukraine upsets our farmers, so on and so forth, which is, yes, true, but it's not the mental framework of helping a country which is suffering aggression. The second and main point of hypocrisy that I see is the fact that there are two big wars at the same time in Gaza and Ukraine, and the European Union is treating the two in a totally different manner. So we are supporting the people who are being attacked in Ukraine, but at the end of the day, we're turning a blind eye to the Netanyahu aggression on Gaza. And that is, for me, a big issue, which makes it, and I don't say this for the applause, honestly. I do say this in very hostile audiences, and I would always speak my mind. But there is a big problem. How can the President of the Commission and the President of Parliament fly to Tel Aviv to shake hands with the Israeli President in the first days of the aggression, and at the same time want us to believe that we're credible in then standing with the people of Ukraine? We need to be principled, and I agree with principles. So I agree with telling China what we believe on human rights, as I believe that we should tell Saudi Arabia what we believe on human rights. That doesn't mean not doing business with those people. But right now, I think that anyone who would come from outer space would say, you know, where do you actually stand? Because you have two very similar, I wouldn't say identical, because both have historical differences and there are many differences. But you have two main conflicts where we have children and families suffering because of aggression, and we are reacting in totally different manners. So for me, this is a problem, and maybe, just maybe, the good thing about Trump is that him cutting a deal with Russia might pave the way for a deal on Gaza. Maybe it's wishful thinking, I do believe. So, and my final point, and this I have repeated a number of times, it's my personal belief. I am not anti-Israeli. I believe that Israeli people are essentially peace-loving people, and are really and truly, they do have a European mindset. So, and what I'm going to say isn't my original idea. I know that it was floated around 25 years ago, mostly by the Italian government. I am one who subscribes to the point that we need to give Israeli people something to look forward to in order to give up the occupation. And that would be, I would be totally in favor of Israel's accession to the European Union. We have discussed the accession of Turkey for so many years. I think Israel would fit handsomely in the European Union, socially and economically, in lieu of them giving up the occupied territories and having a deal on Jerusalem. Why not? to break the impasse. So that doesn't mean but that we don't have the hypocrisy right now, and that is an unsustainable situation.
Mrs. Radichova, a quick comment on that?
Only brief, with full respect to personal view, it's normal. I have to stress that one thing, we have to distinguish political rhetoric and narrative and real politics. And real politics from EU is done by European institutions. And I only want to stress that there is a decision of European court, very clear and direct, also towards Netanyahu. So please have in mind that this is not official real politics of EU, this unbalanced support. This is not the truth. We have to look on, but please, there is a decision of European court, clear decision.
What European court? To do what?
Mr. Muscat, we don't hear you. Can you... Okay. Anyway, I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Conil, and in relation with all these geopolitical crises, most of them that don't originate from the Western Hemisphere and or are closely related to your region, to the Caribbean. What is the strategy and the approach toward these conflicts? And how do you hedge against the impact of these conflicts, their impact on commodity prices, their impact on trade and investment flows, on aid flows, because Europe has been aiding Ukraine a lot for good reasons, but at the same time this has diverted some development funds from other regions and other countries. So how do you approach this very challenging reality of poly-crisis?
If you're a leader in one of the 4 out of 10 African countries that are still very much low income, or if you're one of these countries where you still have large portions of your population living in poverty, or if you're like us in Haiti, where you're still facing problems with security and 700,000 displaced and so forth and so on, and you ask yourself, you know, what do you do to, as you say, hedge against these potential shocks? Everything from COVID to the uncertainties of the many conflicts in the world, to the political leadership changes and the policies that will follow. And as I said a few minutes ago, I actually think that this creates new opportunities. Creates new opportunities for us to rethink about global solidarity and what it means. It's an opportunity for us to rethink regional and sub-regional partnerships and what they mean. It's an opportunity for countries to rethink about how they strengthen their institutions. They do what Rwanda has done, for example, in terms of transparency, which has led to 7.5% growth consistently, or what Bolivia has done in terms of policy autonomy, or it leads us to think about what India does every day in terms of negotiating its global partnerships, so it always has a balanced position that's in the interest of its people. It forces me to think about humongous best practices all over the world that allows countries like mine to continue to progress and to continue to provide basic services to its people despite the uncertainties of the global community. And more than ever, I think, in this uncertain term, because I think one of the things that the past few years has taught us is that politics is changing. Leadership globally is changing, and the impact of these global changes are going to be felt worldwide. So the poorer countries of the world, the emerging countries of the world, it's critical for us to come together collectively and to assess what all of this means for us and how we just come together in solidarity. But I think it also offers opportunities for the more advanced countries to look at new markets, to continue to invest in global progress, to look at emerging, you know, what we've seen over the past few years is a significant reduction in development assistance. What we've seen is Haiti is a case in point, with close to 700,000 displaced people. with a catastrophe that's at least as important as every other major crisis in the world per capita, with its issue of rape. Last year, the humanitarian appeal was at less than 30%. So when we talk about global hypocrisy, as you can understand, when you're sitting from my perspective, you sort of have a different view, and you think Haitian children are a lot less deserving than the children in Gaza or the children in Ukraine. So it sets a whole bunch of other different feelings in terms of response. But what I think history has taught us and continues to teach us is that this is a global community, and we need to come together to make sure that we're providing a balanced approach that provides a minimum of security for every single country in the environment. And I think we need to be more effective in doing that. So again here, I think the changes we're seeing now, the challenges we're facing, and again, starting back to the crisis, should lead to more courageous leadership, more constructive thinking about where we're going and how we need to position ourselves within our countries, within our sub-regions, within our regions, and more globally, so that we can face these threats, which the next generation will have to deal with in a very consistent way. So we might as well rethink our approach, in a more innovative manner. So thank you for raising this issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Connell. I think we have less than 10 minutes, so I will ask you to be as concise as possible. You have basically 2 minutes per speaker. I want to end this conversation with something optimistic and more, forward thinking. So I would want to ask you, what are the new drivers of growth and opportunity you see in this world, taking into account all these risks and geopolitical development? Mr. Chiolo?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think we have a more multipolar world instead of this classical bipolarity. And here for European Union, what's happened with United States, what happened with Ukraine and in other parts of the world could be an opportunity. This decision to shift to a decarbonized economy, it's a very risky one for European Union, especially taking into account what's happened now in United States, our dependency on this market. But a long-term investment, and I recommend you to see attentively to what Mario Draghi has said in his report asked by European Council, and together with Enrico Letta, a report on competitiveness of European economy. I think if we find a way to strongly invest in our economy, together with stop of the war in Ukraine and launching the reconstruction of Ukraine, I think this could be an opportunity for European Union to reset the relations with neighborhood, with Eastern neighborhood clearly, with Balkans also. We should connect this area beyond political negotiations for accession process, which would be longer than expected, but I think we can have a clear deal to integrate these parts of Europe in our economic development, and also with North Africa. European Union will need a long-term and strategic deal with North Africa for the development of his economy, for energy supply, raw material supply, dealing with migration, and we have also demographic problem in European Union, so we cannot stop migration, but we have to control this. And I think, as I mentioned, complex deal with US model could be also used in relation with North Africa, for example.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Ardichova?
Briefly, my generation has lived, that the future is connected with hope. This generation is living with the feeling that the future is connected with fear. So our duty, our debt towards new generation and next generations is to return the hope to our lives. It means that we are capable to solve the problems and understand the problems as a new challenges, that we are capable to give the answers to new geopolitical division, that we are capable to solve really non-justice inequalities around the world, because this is creating the major tension, also is the reason of migration and future migration waves. And last but not least, that we are capable to offer really the equality of chances for people, doesn't matter from which continent and from which religion. And this is what I hope. And this was hope of my generation. And I would like to use such a brainstorming, such a clever population and people keeping together also here in Tangier to find possible answer, and not to find who is guilty, but how we can put forces together to find adequate answers to new challenges we are facing today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Muscat?
So I think that we will be living in a world, increasingly in a world, where governments have less power. Doesn't mean less legislative power, but less reach, whether it is because of AI, whether it is because of anything else, and where there will be two rising powers. The first will be the private sector, will be corporations, whether they are energy corporations, whether they are IT-related corporations, whether they are health corporations. We seem to think that COVID is just something that happened a century ago, when it happened just a few years ago, and that it will never repeat itself. I think it has showed the great deal of importance that the health sector has in the security of human beings. The second type of power that will rise is civil society. It's people who do not want to be within the scope of government, as in being those taking the decisions, but wanting to shape the decisions that will be taken by policy makers. And I don't believe there is still yet a generation of leaders that is ready to face this new challenge. I believe that no one is ready right now to face this new challenge. It will be a learning curve for everyone, but it will be a very interesting period where we will have the center of power that will move away from the capitals, as in the capital cities, and more within the boardrooms and more within the universities and the places where discussions are made.
Thank you very much. Mr. Conil, as the voice of the Global South, this is the forum of the Global South, so...
Oh, but thank you so much, and I think our colleagues here have done an exceptional job in framing it. I worry. I think we're not making enough in terms of progress related to climate. I don't know what the change in government in the United States will bring to that. I worry because I think that we need to do way more for countries right now that are dealing with all sorts of struggles. I worry because I see a regression in a number of countries that actually are considered to be democratic. We've seen more regression in terms of democracies in the last 10 years than ever before. I worry the impact of social media on opinion and the way presidents and governments officials are chosen today. I worry that the type of leadership that we've had in our recent past in different countries that inspired young people seem to be disappearing, but I'm also hopeful. I'm hopeful that with the opportunities that new technologies will bring, I'm hopeful when I look at the green economy, and it's up to 12 million people right now working in the global new energy. I'm extremely optimistic about the potential that the demographic opportunities present in Africa. I'm extremely optimistic when I look at how many countries have moved into upper middle class in the past 15 years since I've been working in Africa. So it's a mixed bag of incredible opportunities and risks. And the whole issue is, will leadership in different countries step up to meet the challenges and make the best of the opportunities in the near future?
Thank you very much, and we finished on time, so this is an achievement in itself. Perhaps I think if we just have 1 minute or two, this dimension of cooperation between the Europe and the Mediterranean and Africa and the Caribbean as well, of course, is something that has been perhaps quite pushed aside over the last few years. So is there something that could be done to a new initiative? Can you see a new initiative coming from the European Union, European Commission or whatever, to kind of reboot this cooperation, just in one word or two? Who wants to address this topic?
I think if you look even to the structure of the new commission, it's for the first time that we have a commissioner with a mandate, clear mandate on Mediterranean. And I think this is not only to counterbalance the fact that neighborhood policy is more focused now on the east because of Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia and Balkans, but I think also because, as I mentioned, this strategic autonomy in economic development in European Union is depending on raw material, is depending on workforce. European Union should prove the capacity to deal with migration, and I think on all these aspects, and also energy supply. This is another key element for this new model, new economic model in European Union. Technology is strongly connected to energy. When you see now what's happened in Ireland, for example, who attracted a lot of investment in new technology with a lot of strong databases from the big tech in Ireland, the consumption of energy increasing a lot. So we have to deal also with that, and in all these aspects, I think, as I mentioned, Mediterranean, South Mediterranean and North Africa can play a key role of connection between European Union and Sub-Saharan Africa. And I think it's key for European Union not to leave, to go beyond historical problems and I don't know, projections of relation between Western European and Africa, and to reconnect and to redevelop a partnership based on new realities and in more pragmatism, looking what's happened around.
Thank you. Mrs. Radishova?
I don't know, we are out of time, but okay, huge problem, briefly. You know, we can fight, and then we will have loss-loss strategy, or we can try to cooperate and we have a chance to have win-win strategy. Depends, I agree, on political leadership, if they are prepared, or they will play the game of real populists, trying only to find the enemies to fight, to create barriers because it's much easy, than to say openly, come on, citizens, we have lived on debts, we have used everything what we could, and now it's time to stop us, to change strategy, how we will survive for the next generation, because except the problems we have heard, we are really facing climate change. And those who now are deeply suffering, mainly in the region of Mediterranean countries and African countries, but we are also facing the impact. So either we will put the forces, I repeat, together, or we will have deep problems, such deep as scientists now, keeping the finger and said, come on, the increase of temperature is more than 1.5 of a percentage. If we continue in this way, we will face very quickly real global terrible problem with no clear solutions and not quick solutions. So it's time to stop the way we are thinking on economy. Last sentence, you know, when I hear the sentence, increase of economic development, increase of GDP with not increasing sources, the sources are used. So we have to really change the way of our thinking and of our economic model, and mainly the spoiled part of the world based on consumer economy and consumer behavior.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Maybe just few words. Mr. Muscat, do you want no? Okay, so thank you very much for this exceptional conversation. Thank you to the audience for listening to this very interesting debate. And I think there are other discussions today that will be very interesting as well. Thank you very much.